So, as the title says, we're here to deconstruct and demystify DEI hiring uh, in the context of Black History Month and also in the context of our professions as customer success, customer minded growth leaders. So, hello and welcome to our next iteration of our Diversity and Customer Success webinar series. My name is Ejieme Eromosele, and I'll be your moderator today. First, I want to thank Success Coaching for giving us this space and this platform for, going on 3 years now, to have these sorts of important discussions. As a founder of Success in Black, Success Coaching was one of our very early partners. They believed in our mission and have really been great allies in our journey. So thank you. For those of you who aren't familiar with Success Coaching, just 2 seconds on them. They are a world leader in customer success training. Their mission is to reinvent the way the customer success training is done and to really make it a space that's accessible, effective, and actionable. They offer a variety of training options from self-paced online courses to instructor-led boot camps and even 12-week coaching programs as well. And they do events such as CSM Mastermind and CS Leadership Roundtables as well. So to find out more about Success Coaching and what they can offer, please go visit successcoaching.co. I'm also very proud today to be representing Success in Black. This is an organization I founded in 2020, and SIB is an award-winning platform that's focused on advancing D&IB and customer success and highly facing customer roles. We aim to make customer success and tech a safer and more inclusive space for all professionals. And we're first really focused on elevating Black professionals in customer success. We provide powerful resources to help them advance their careers. You can stay connected with us by following us on LinkedIn. Just search Success in Black, or also signing up to receive updates from our website, which is successinblack.co. So just two more bits of housekeeping before we dive into our juicy topic today. One, please remember to use the Q&A feature that's in the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's a Q&A window. You can please directly ask us questions there, and we will be answering those questions live towards the end of our webinar today. And also, Success Coaching will be offering a replay of this session. So please check that out on their website. And again, sign up on their website to receive updates when it is posted. So without further ado, I do want to let the panelists do a quick introduction of themselves so you all know who you're speaking to and who will be speaking with you today. First, let's start with Keishla. Please introduce yourself.
Hi. Thanks, Ejieme. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here with you today. I'm a customer success leader with over 20 years of sales and success experience. I also have a background as a classroom educator. I currently serve as the managing director of partner success at EAB, where I lead a team focused on delivering value to partners, achieving business goals, and managing the aspects of the customer journey from post-implementation through the success and renewals and expansion. In addition to the work that I have done in sales and customer success, I have spent close to 15 years of my work dedicated to supporting the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am an ERG leader in my organization, and so my focus is really to use my space as a business leader to help make sure that our workplaces are ones that are both supportive of both all employees. I'm really advancing the precepts of diversity, equity, inclusion, and helping people thrive. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Keishla. Anthony, we'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Anthony DeShazor. I'm Senior Vice President of Customer Success and Experience at Givelify. I bring to the table over 30 years of experience in technology. Gosh, do I feel old every time I say that. But 20 years in post-acquisition leadership. I've been Chief Customer Officer from companies as young as a zero revenue company all the way to publicly traded companies, going with ARR up to almost $1 billion. So I have a lot of experience. What I do today, I serve as both the CX leader and the CS leader for a philanthropy platform called Givelify, where we help organizations of all sizes raise money to do good for the world. I'm very passionate about technology, very passionate about leaving a legacy and building a generation that will stand in my place.
Amazing. Quite impressive background, both of you. And I know Stephanie has one too. Please intro yourself.
Anthony, we didn't talk about that mic. How am I supposed to compete with that? We didn't discuss this, but but my name is Stephanie Workman-Bolden, and I actually live in the Northern Virginia area, right outside of Washington, D.C. I have been there since college days, so it's been 20 plus years. I always tell the story that my senior year of college, I started teaching summer school, and I knew I wanted to stay in the education space, but maybe in a different capacity. So then I started getting into the ed tech space. And since then, I've just kind of flourished in this world of watching ed tech emerge to what it is today. It is my heart of being able to pair together education policy with technology, learning tools. So fast forward to today, I am VP of Partner Success at Discovery Education. So they were born out of the Discovery Channel, and they are a K through 12 global learning platform, providing digital content and learning tools for teachers and students all across the world. But our mission is just very similar to Keishla, just driving value within our school districts and ensuring that we're honoring all perspectives and doing that work. Fun fact, when I was in high school, age 15, I started a diversity committee, and it's still going on today. So this is why it brings me also to this point of so passionate about this work. So thank you, Ejieme.
Thank you, Stephanie. Wow, what a panel. Quick intro for me, as I mentioned, founder of Success in Black, but by day, I am VP of Customer Growth at a company called Quick. We do AI for customer experience. And I've been doing that for 7 years. Ex-management consultant. I worked at Accenture and PwC early in my career. And then I also ran customer experience for the New York Times, where I was also the lead of our Black ERG. You can see that consistency amongst all of us that you'll be hearing from today in terms of this longstanding passion and commitment around DE&IB. So let's get started. So given where we are with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in tech, and I would even say in the broader political landscape, we really felt that now was the perfect time to have this conversation. Coincidentally, this year, so 2025, the Black History Month theme is African Americans and labor. So this theme underscores the diverse and significant ways in which labor has been at the core of the Black experience here in America. And we're going to dig into what that theme means, because it's really helpful to have a shared understanding before we start to explore these topics more thoroughly. So I'm going to hand it off to Keishla. So this Black History Month theme, African Americans and labor, what does this mean to you personally? And can you help us just ground the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Grounding the conversation for many, the origins of Black History Month started with Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history. He established the Association of the Study of African American Life in 1915. And in 1926, he launched what many of us might know about as Negro History Week. And so he understood the importance of trying to provide some context and focus around the public's attention around Black history. And so the ASALH still continues Dr. Carter G. Woodson's mission of making sure that a theme is put forth every year. And as you mentioned, Ejieme, this year really focuses on the profound ways that work and work of all kinds, free and unfree, skilled and unskilled, vocational, voluntary, intersect with our collective experience as Black people. And so it really is making sure that we understand how work has been center to much of Black history and culture. And that could roots all the way back to the traditional, agricultural, all the way to the ways in which we show up in professional spaces today. And so we want to make sure that we're honoring that legacy of Black entrepreneurship and Black labor, both organized and unorganized, where we've been fighting for economic justice and social justice. And one of the things that I want to point out in this theme is that this year, 2025, marks the 100-year anniversary of the creation of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and Maids. And this was the first Black labor organization that was recognized by the American Federation of Labor. And many of the issues, this was founded by A. Philip Randolph, many of the issues that he put forth that were central to the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, which were incorporated in the work of MLK's economic justice campaign, still stand true today. We're still fighting for many of those precepts of economic justice, equity, and fairness. And so we really look forward today into digging into that, what it means to be having the opportunity for equity and access, and how that manifests itself in the way that we grow and build wealth and capital and well-being for Black people in America and across the globe for that matter.
Thank you for that, Keishla. Really, really great foundation. We, as panelists, were actually just talking earlier before folks hopped on, what some of those systemic things that limited Black people from advancing their careers, their livelihoods, their families. And so, Anthony, I want to pass it to you to talk about that kind of historical undervaluation of Black labor and how you think it's shaped workplace dynamics of Black professionals even today.
Thank you for that. One of the things that I'm very proud of about being American is that innovation is at the core of who we are. It's actually in our Constitution, where Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 allowed Congress to provide protections for innovation. The challenge, though, is that with the 1793 Patent Act that established the rules, the processes for getting a patent, it actually excluded non-citizens from getting a patent. The challenge, if you were a slave, by definition of our Constitution and by many of the laws that were on the books in the early days of our history, you were not considered a citizen. In fact, you were property. And anything you produce as a slave, be it any intellectual property, any invention, any way or any new process that would make things easier for you in the field, for example, that was owned by your master, not by you. So it wasn't just that, they didn't have the opportunity. Yeah, that's part of it, but they couldn't even have standing to own their own intellectual property and inventions. And so the first African-American patent holder, strangely, was a person who came up with, his name is Thomas Jennings, who came up with the predecessor of dry cleaning. He got his patent in 1821. The only reason why he was able to get his patent is that he was born free. He was never a slave. The Dred Scott decision of 1857 put in great question for some African Americans that had slavery in their background. Their citizenship was even put more in question. If you were a slave, you truly weren't a citizen, but could you buy your freedom and become citizen? The answer to that question was very murky. So the other one that I want to bring up that was very important to me in my research is Henry Boyd. Henry Boyd created this invention that we're all living on today, using today. It was the Boyd bedstay, and it was a way of connecting the headboard and the footboard of your bed in a very sturdy way. Prior to his invention, people just used ropes, which means it was very flimsy. Well, because he was a former slave, he bought his own freedom. He had to partner with a white cabinet maker by the name of George Porter to get a patent. So while he did the job, he came up with the invention, he was not in any legal standing to actually own his own invention. Now, he went on to be successful. For that time, he had a business in Cincinnati, Ohio, employing about 18 to 25 people. But that sense that African Americans did not own, could not create, could not come up with any invention lasted for quite some time. And even today, I think some of us are feeling that when you come up with something, there's always this question about, did you really come up with that? Or what help did you get? It's that same thing that was almost built into the fabric of the nation that we're still fighting with today.
Yeah. I mean, that was just really compelling. And thank you so much for dropping some of that historical context as well. You're right. Some of the systemic structures that were put in place, decades ago are still impacting our lives today. So let's actually bring it into today. Uh, Given where we are, 2025, we've got a new administration. We see what's happening in tech. Um, I want to maybe have you, Stephanie, kind of bring us into why this discussion is urgent now more than ever, and why it's important to talk about how this is connected with what's happening today.
I think it's interesting because on LinkedIn, right? I've been a part of some marketing communities, sales communities, different professions, but I actually think that customer success uniquely has become a dominant force in shaping work culture and creating thought leadership on platforms like LinkedIn. And I think that when you think of why, and you think of this ability of like having inclusive voices and amplifying different voices is really the reason why it's become a dominant force and why this profession has grown the way it has. I also think Keishla and I joke about this often around this is one of those professions that you see conversations around like, what's the future of customer success? And I always felt that inclusion is like rooted into the future proofing of customer success. That's what it is. When you think of the components that make up our role, we always talk about empathy, right? But you got to understand somebody to empathize, right? There has to be a level of understanding. We talk often in customer success about persona-based strategy, right? Knowing your buyer, knowing the person you're driving value to. You got to know them to do that. You need to know them on different levels. You need to understand demographically what that looks like. You need to know the lived experiences of your buyer to be able to effectively message value to them, right? When it comes to even just value, we have lots of conversations around value realization. But again, those things are rooted in your ability to develop a value-based culture yourself. But the only way to do that is to know the person on the other end on a different level. The only way to do that is to come in with your own shared experiences that are diverse, that are representation of all in order to effectively talk about what it is you're doing with a customer. So I'm speaking about this very specifically to customer success because I look at this and I hear what's happening. And I feel like the intended or unintended consequence is the fact that we're going to affect the component of our industry that is making it flourish to what it is. And that's a terrifying thing. But I think when you look at it, just what it is, and you break it down what those components are that make somebody truly a successful customer success professional, those are the things you need to have. I laugh sometimes, I reflect, and I think of like in my past experience, even in a previous company, of like folks who've had trouble like getting in the door to sell something to somebody. In the back of my mind, I'm like, you just don't know that person. You just didn't take any time to understand them. You don't have the historical context to really understand maybe the demographics that you're serving into or trying to speak to. And there's no one around you to help you with that. There's no thought partner around you to talk you through. Maybe if you're going to go sell this product to this person here, like maybe try this approach because they'll probably be more receptive to that. When you don't have that around you and you don't have that yourself, like how are you effectively doing what you can do every single day in your profession? So that's why I think like as these things are happening, it's important for us to continue this conversation. And if you took the acronym away, DEI from and many of you are going to be part of companies where that is absolutely going to happen. But you have core values in your company that truly values inclusion, that truly values what it means to have a diverse perspective, that it's important to have people on your product team understand what it means about accessibility, right? That you're going to sustain what's going to happen in the next, whatever happens. You're going to be okay. You have core values that believe that. But if you don't, that's why we have to have these conversations to continue talking about this so that we understand, like you break down the very components that make us such a strong force in this industry, how those things can be compromised.
It's so interesting. You mentioned, the things happening at many of the companies that we may work at, and the I guess negativity that's put around words that usually didn't have a negative connotation, right? Diversity aside, let's hold that. But things like equity, things like inclusion, things like belonging are all typically positive, connotations. But now the phrase D&I, DNIB, for all many different reasons, now has a negative connotation. I want to maybe dig into that piece a little bit. So, I think, many of us have seen, I think the challenge of D&I hire, that term get thrown around again as a negative connotation, and then that being put as in opposition to, let's say, merit-based hiring. So I want to kind of maybe talk about that a little bit, and maybe Anthony, you can get us started. So can we actually just like unpack what D&I means or what you think it means, and with some specific examples?
Sure, I love that. Because I think a lot of times, call it marketing, call it just, political, gamesmanship, whatever you call it. It's quick to put a label on something that people don't really understand. It's so easy to just get people to talk about the initials, the acronym, without really understanding what it stands for. So when I think of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I like to talk about it almost in a different order. Diversity, think everyone's okay with. They say, listen, maybe not, I won't say everyone, but it's the easiest for people to really understand. It means having diverse views, people from different backgrounds, different cultures. I even like to think about it from even different schools of thought. One of the strengths of most of the teams I've been in is that we've had people from all different schools of thought sitting at the table to solve a problem. You don't want to be at a table where everyone's gone to Harvard or everyone's gone to Brown or everyone's gone to whatever school. You want different elements or different ways of thinking so that you can have every tool at your disposal to solve a problem. That's really diversity at its core. You're bringing in all these different voices to help illuminate your dark spots, your blind spots, and help you come up with new ways of thinking and solving a problem. The next thing I'd like to talk about is inclusion. Now that you have the diverse people at the table, how do you create an atmosphere where everyone's contribution is heard and valued? That's inclusion. If I can put it into my personal life, and this is something I personally have to manage about myself, I have if anyone has like the predictive index or DISC, I have a very dominant personality. I have an A drive that's out of this world. So that means I can get into a meeting and I can actually out-talk almost everyone. Well, I've had good bosses that will pull me to a side and say, listen, you have to give space for other people. That's inclusion. How do you create a space where others have the freedom, have the support they need to contribute? The one that I think people really have a challenge with is equity. People think equity and equality are the same thing, and they're not. I'm going to ask the parents here, do you treat all your children equally? And if anyone tells me yes, I can tell you you're lying. You treat them all as they need to be treated. I was one of those kids growing up, and my mom tells this story all the time. She could make me crumble by a look. She didn't have to say anything, didn't have to raise her voice. She can just give me a look and I'll crumble. My sisters, on the other hand, that took a little bit more management, a little bit more parenting to get my sisters to understand what they were saying. So if my mom were to come to me and apply the same parenting that she did to my sister, it would not have been as effective because I needed a different touch. Equity says, I'm going to treat you as an individual to give you what you need to succeed. Doesn't mean lowering the bar. It means I'm going to take the time to understand you and what it means to unlock that powerhouse that I see inside of you. So it's not just treating everyone equally, it's treating everyone with the touch they need so they all have equal opportunity. So that's why I think equity is a little difficult for people to understand, because they're like, isn't it fair? I'm just treating everyone the same way, but not really. It's not really fair for me to go in and if I'm a drill sergeant and not everyone responds to that drill sergeant mentality, if I'm screaming at everyone, that will motivate some people on my team, but it would also cause some people on my team to retreat. So I have to treat everyone the way they need to be treated to be the best that they can be.
That is super helpful. Thank you so much for giving us that uh, grounding in definitions of the word, and in those definitions of the word, it's this is not a bad thing, right? So why is it positioned as a bad thing? And well, less on that, because this is not a political debate necessarily, but more how do we put it in context with our professional lives, right? So the, idea of a DEI hire being a negative connotation, let's put that again against the idea of merit. So maybe Keishla, you can kind of like help us start to dispel, the
Yeah.
myth that being a DEI hire is the opposite of being a merit-based hire.
100%. Yeah. And I think, Anthony did a great job of sort of rooting us in definitions that, yeah, like on its surface, feel like something we should all be able to get behind. I think what we have to do now is then take those definitions and place them in the context that is America and American history with all of those things that Anthony set up for the beginning of us. And when we think about the origins of what we call DE&I today, are rooted back in the 1964 Civil Rights Act that has manifested itself in the, where we're trying to close gender gaps and racial gaps, where we start to see initiatives around affirmative action. So it's had a lot of different names and it's evolved over time, and how it's shown up. But I think what we have to really recognize is that, to Anthony's point, not everybody agrees that there should be diversity in spaces, equity in spaces, and inclusivity in spaces. So there are some people who have a different belief system. And that belief system is rooted in a past that says that the way things used to be was based on merit, when oftentimes it wasn't. And we just need to understand, even today, most jobs aren't posted for hire. And now, even when they are posted, they already know who they're going to hire because they've already worked that out somewhere else. And so we have all dealt with that sense of feeling like we don't have the same edge, we don't have the same access to opportunity. And we know that that has played out differently on people of color, Black people, women, people from LGBTQ backgrounds, and the like. And so, like, it's not. I think what we have to push and say is that the intention of diversity, equity, inclusion was to make sure we were creating the space for merit and not on the other ways in which people were chosen and selected for roles and opportunities. And some of those were legally codified in the cases of what Anthony has shared with us. So, for me, like, hot take, it's like, we have these sort of like really clear denotation, understandings of these words, but how they have played out both historically and presently in America doesn't look that way. And what's super ironic is the ways in which these current forces are attempting to use the very legislation that was meant to protect people like me, right? That were meant to protect us from what was, and they're using it to flip it and reverse it. And so I think it's just I think it's something we have to pay attention to. I think it's something we have to steel ourselves to. And so part of the title of this webinar is to say, I am not a DE&I hire. I am a qualified person. I met all the expectations for the role, probably more so than somebody else who would have gotten this job. And we need to make sure that we are really pushing back on this use of it as a slur, as a mark of less than and undervaluation, because we know that has been the history, is to undervalue Black labor, Black genius, Black production, and to make it feel like it's not enough when we know that we've been the backbone of so much in this nation, to be able to make it the way that it is today.
Amazing. I will ask folks, please feel free to ask questions or even maybe drop a comment or two in the Q&A. Thank you so much for that, Keishla. I will also maybe say and challenge to you are not a D&I hire. I want to say I am a D&I hire because those things are positive things to me. And as a leader, those are values that I want to bring to the teams that I help lead and to the companies that I help be a part of. Because again, it doesn't mean I'm less than. It doesn't mean my MBA from a top 10 business school is less than. It means that those things are valuable to me, right? So I think we can be both.
I feel that.
Stephanie, you did a great job earlier of grounding the discussion back to our roles in customer success and in the broader tech ecosystem. So, why is cultivating a culture that values diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging particularly important for those of us in tech and in customer success?
Just get a history lesson from Keishla, so she knows that if I ever need it, I'm going to call her and she'll give it to me. So it's another glimpse into our conversations. But I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm so passionate about is making sure that it's almost like safeguarding the profession in every capacity, and why, again, this is such a detriment to the growth of customer success in general. Oops.
You're muted.
Yeah, I think she put herself on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm in a co-working space and there was something going on. So I hope you don't hear any alarms.
All good.
Good. Well, Ejieme, actually, what got me thinking about this too is why SIB became Success in Black, and why a lot of these communities became so important, because I think that they were instrumental in actually helping to create these cultures of inclusion. Because that's what it is. It's like when we say create a value-based culture in your company to help drive outcomes with customers, it's the same concept as driving a culture of inclusion, right? When you think about that. And so that's why, these communities emerged, and I found myself when looking at Success in Black and just seeing people who, I think the biggest misconception that's happening with this DEI space conversation is that people just looking for a cheat code. They're just looking to get put on because of race, because of gender. And there's not one single person in these community groups that I'm part of who's looking for a cheat code. Nobody's looking for a cheat code. People are looking for opportunities to shadow. People are looking for opportunities of hey, can we have conversations so I can learn about your role? Can I have 10 minutes to just digest and process some ideas? I don't know a single person who's looking for a cheat code. And I think that's the painful, again, consequence that's happening from this, is people almost, questioning the intentionality of folks. And I wish I could just take a snapshot and just show people, especially in the Success in Black community, of the conversations that happen every single day in it. And I think this, again, with this idea of culture of inclusion, I have this theory about mentorship and sponsorship. So I think we all realize mentorship is very rooted in guidance, right? You seek a mentor, you're seeking guidance, you're having conversations around, they're more advisory, career level advisory questions. Sponsorship to me is the epitome of advocacy, right? Somebody's really putting you on. They're either putting their name out there, they're vouching for you. But I always felt especially in the Black community, there's something in between those two things. It's almost like developmental sponsorship. And I think that's the whole part of this culture of inclusion, where people are looking to develop their skills. So when I look at Success in Black, for example, people are getting those opportunities to just join a very low risk speaking engagement. You've never done that before. Yeah. Or hey, can I shadow you in your job for a day and see what you're doing? Or can I go to this conference and listen to these things? That's the piece that I think is helping us. And when we talk about this culture, again, of inclusivity, of what that actually means so that they can grow in this profession. And again, we see it. So I love seeing these communities grow and the work that they're doing in order to cultivate this pipeline. It's really a pipeline of customer success professionals.
I love that. Keishla, did you want to add on to that?
Just in responding to somebody's comment in the Q&A,
Yeah.
It's just, to your point, Stephanie, about the cheat codes, there used to be cheat codes, and they still are there, and they were exercised by people of different communities. So somebody said in the comments, people are looking for the cheat code that was traditionally given to people of other backgrounds and demographics. And so we want those cheat codes turned off. And then I think to your point of sponsorship, I think for many of us, we feel like there's that middle ground, because I think we're still grappling with this sense of imposter syndrome, that we don't belong, that we're not supposed to be there. So we want somebody saying our names in those rooms, but we don't feel confident to ask for it. So I think that's part of that push, is to say, yeah, I am doing the things that deserve my name to be said in rooms that I'm not in, or I deserve to be brought into rooms that I haven't, or tables to that I haven't been brought onto, or I feel confident bringing people to my table. And I think while I no longer ascribe to the concept of imposter syndrome, and I encourage everybody to let that go. You don't have imposter syndrome. You don't have experience at something, and experience happens when you go do it. So go do the thing. And then you'll have experience. And imposters are seeking to defraud or to cheat or to lie. We see enough of that. That's not what we're about. What we're here to do is to have experiences and to grow. And so that's the cheat code we're trying to unlock that helps us get into spaces and allow us to shine. So
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you, Stephanie, too, for shouting out Success in Black. Like, it's been just an amazing experience to create those spaces. And I do also want to take maybe 2 seconds to shout out some of the other communities in customer success. So, communities like Women in Customer Success, Women of Customer Success, the South Asian Success Network that a good friend, Parul, runs. Customer Success Africa as a Nigerian, love what they're doing for the continent, Customer Success Middle East, right? So, if anything, I feel like customer success, because we are of heart and head, like this is our natural inclination to create these spaces, right? And I hope that we can help set a positive influence for the rest of tech to really embrace inclusivity as well.
And Ejieme, can I
That's how
say
you
one
go.
thing on that? I think that's
Yeah,
such an important
absolutely.
thing. Like, I think I've had some folks ask, like, what do these community conversations look like?
Yeah.
Is the women in customer success talking about women issues for 4 hours together? Is successive? Are we just talking about
We're
black
just talking about
something
Beyonce.
all for 4 hours?
Honestly, Keishla and I are just talking about Beyonce. That is
Talking
it.
about Beyonce tickets. I don't.
Ray Carter,
Yes,
I'll be there.
she's draining my wallet. I mean, yes, that's that is my constant
Yeah.
conversation. But besides that, was one great example of somebody who said, I have trouble navigating networking spaces as a Black male in this profession. I feel like, I go to happy hours, I don't drink. And it's difficult for me to feel like I'm making connections with leadership. And also when people start drinking, it's awkward. Some racial comments come out and I don't know how to navigate that. That's the purpose of having community groups to, like talk about those things. It doesn't mean everybody in that community group has the same lived experience, but it does mean you're in a population of people who have shared ones. So you can take that piece, right, of how to navigate workspace networking and talk to a people in a safe space to be able to have that conversation of how should I think about that? What are nuanced ways for me to network that don't put me in those awkward positions? Or I'm going to have really uncomfortable conversations. That's a very tangible example of why these things exist and why they're so powerful. So thank you for that.
And I just added one more because I'm sitting here amening everything that's been said. One of the best things I've seen from being in these groups is to just be able to see someone like you achieve.
Mhm.
It's one of these things when you can sit there and see someone that's from your background potentially, known some of the struggles you struggle with, and see them actually succeed, even if they're on the same level as you are. It's just having that feeling that I'm not the only one.
Mhm.
So even if we don't all have the answer, even if there's no one in the group that has the answer, knowing that there's someone else there that's doing or going through the same thing, that's still something of value. I mean, to me, that's the power of these groups. It's not about actually excluding. It's actually about including. How do we bring people in? And so in all these groups, hey, listen, if you're not the profile of the group, still join. You may still have things that you can do and you can contribute to help us all get to the place where we want to be. So I really do encourage everyone, find a group that you connect with, find a group that speaks to you and join.
Or create one that doesn't
Or create
exist.
one that doesn't exist.
I mean, I'm proud to say that Success in Black has helped influence some of those other groups and organizations that exist today. So yeah, if you see a gap, I'm a big fan of, yes, we want a seat at the table, but we also can build our own tables, right? And there's nothing taking away from that table we're just creating more. So thank you so much for that. Again, please feel free to add your questions in our Q&A. Stephanie, your comment, maybe two comments ago at this point, is setting us up for the next section of the discussion. And it's around kind of like going back to like skills and competence. So to your point of like, people just want the opportunity to do a thing, to learn a new skill. Let's take that into kind of the idea of cultural competence, because I think that that's one of the elements of, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Is like, how are we culturally aware? And culture can mean, being from a different part of the world, being from a different, socioeconomic view. But let's talk about that in the context of driving business outcomes and enhancing customer relationships. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have customers that look exactly like me and are of the same exact cultural background I'm in. So, given that we are in customer success, that we have to, liaise and interface with people from all walks of life, let's talk about cultural competency as a skill set. Um, Maybe Anthony, you can kick us off in that discussion.
Sure. One of the things that I actually enjoyed by when I started working at international companies is the ability to go different places and to meet different cultures and being them. But one of the things I found is that they're intentional. When I was at Hitachi, they were very intentional about preparing you to go into any culture where you were going to do business. So if you're going to Latin America, they actually had a someone to come along and say, "Hey, let me tell you how to do business in Portugal. Here's how things work in Portugal." I remember one of the first times I went to Portugal to do business, I went with an American mindset. I was there at 9. I was expected to be done by 6. And when all of a sudden someone said, "Let's go to dinner," and dinner didn't start till 9 and didn't finish till about 1 o'clock in the morning, that was very foreign to me. But I had to have someone bring me along. It's like, business is not done the American way every place you go. You have to be able to relate to the culture in which you serve, the culture that you're going to do business. Same thing when I went to Japan for the first time. I had to get the class of how do you exchange business cards, how important that is. What does it mean if you don't, hold the business card right and really look at it? That was a competency type training that I needed to have. And it's very critical if you're in a customer facing role that you have people on your teams or have access to training that people can help you develop this muscle, develop this skill set, or else you're going to be offending customers without even knowing it. And that's the hard part. I'll say one other thing that I found very interesting. Most of us, when we're in customer facing roles, we know we have a very short window to make a connection with a customer. You don't have 15 hours. Oftentimes that connection has to be developed in seconds. You have to be able to be diverse enough, to be an experience enough where you can find something about this individual to connect to. It's something about the way they smile or something in their background, something that allows you to connect. Well, the more cultures you're exposed to, the better you are in making those quick connections.
Absolutely. Stephanie, did you want to add on to that?
I love that and Anthony, it got me thinking about just competencies in general. Like when you're building your framework for your customer success teams and you're laying out all the competencies that you feel are like the backbone of the role, retention strategy, cross-functional collaboration. I do think there's a component about cultural competency as its own competency within this. And it's one of those things, like, especially in ed tech, it's like you take a problem and you break it down and you break down the components of it. And there's no denying that requires a level of cultural conversations, and it requires different perspectives to solve a challenge. And I know I'm just reflecting on education, but I guarantee every industry is going to have a component to this that requires conversations around this competency of navigating these conversations. I think having the ability to navigate conflict, just conflict resolution, is a skill, right? And it's a skill that should invest time into, that everybody in 2025 needs to be able to have. Need to be able to have like actual frameworks that help you. The same way we invest in actual like talk track frameworks. There are companies out there, Sales Gym is one of them, that creates frameworks to help you like put together thought process, right? So that when you're talking to a customer, you know how to break it down based upon different frameworks they give you. I think it's the same thing that you would invest in having conversations that are sensitive, conversations that involve conflict. And so those are things that we are rolling in, that we've been working on, like even in previous companies that we've tried to work on, of just like, it doesn't have to, if I don't even have to use the word cultural competency. This is just a fundamental skill of you being able to navigate these conversations with different people. And exactly what you said, Anthony, it's like, lay out the challenge that you have. I'm trying to build a relationship. I'm in a different country, and here's how I'm going to do it. But here are the things I have to take into consideration to do that. So I think the more that we treat this as an actual competency, I think is how we'll get there.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Stephanie, did you want to add on, Keishla? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, and I think just cultural competency in general on your teams and how you interact internally with one another is super important, and how you have different perspectives and voices that have an opportunity to influence how you go to market with something, how you organize a product. We've all seen the failed commercials. You're like, how did they make that commercial, Kendall Jenner, in the middle of the Black Lives Matter march in the Pepsi commercial? Like, who was not on your team to tell you what we see? You know, we all come into this world as a, you know, shaped by our lived experiences, by the lived experiences of our communities, our ancestors, and all of that informs the way that we interpret things, the way that we interpret hand gestures, right? My hand gestures could be saying something to one person that's not saying to another, right? We got a whole language with just our faces as Black women. So how are we making sure that we are having people at the table that can help us decode and understand and put forth the best business possible? You know, any organization that is seeking to shrink back from diversity, equity, and inclusion is saying, I'm shrinking back from this market. I'm shrinking back from this space. That's not the way of the world. That's not the direction the world is going. And so we should be doing everything we can to give our young people and ourselves as many ways to translate the world as possible, as many decoder rings as possible, so that we can be involved and connected if we want to really ensure, you know, future-proof customer success and future-proof ourselves.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Keishla. There are a few questions in the Q&A that I want to make sure we have time to answer. There is one from Kyle Lane. Thanks so much for asking. He's asking, as most of you have direct experience with ERGs, what are some top line pieces of advice you could share with other ERG leaders cultivating these safe spaces for Black individuals at tech companies? I've got some thoughts, but I want to see if other members of the panel. So as I mentioned, I ran the Black ERG at the New York Times. The one piece of advice that I think really helped us, Black and NYT, shout out to those folks there, was to make sure that you have senior leadership executive alignment. When we restructured Black at NYT, I specifically asked for our CEO at the time, Mark Thompson, to be our executive champion. And he agreed. And that really propelled our ability to have change, to have the types of events, to have the type of fundraising and attention that we needed to have a direct impact. The second one, I would say, start to seriously tackle actual policy. Like, yes, you should create spaces for people to get together and to network and to fellowship. But where we had our real impact was creating policies that could live on even beyond those of us that were in a moment in time in leadership. So a policy that we got to put in place was actually sharing DE&I and diverse statistics about the organization, not only the overall statistics, but a breakdown between senior leadership and the rest of the organization as well. You want to show that you're actually creating sustainable change for the business. So those are my two from my time as a ERG leader at the New York Times. Anthony, Keishla, or Stephanie, anything to add on there?
I think you hit on a lot of key points there. Alignment to your overall, mission and values of your organization, alignment. If there's DE&I leadership, your ERG should be in alignment with your DE&I leadership and in alignment with one another so that you're able to amplify each other's work. We spent the past 2 years and I lead a BIPOC ERG where we service all the needs of BIPOC employees in our firm. And we spent the last year, my first year as a chair, we really focused on understanding our community, what the needs were, what the challenges were, because it's just a huge and very diverse community. And even within subgroups, there was a lot of diversity in that. So we really spent time like focusing ourselves a bit inward. I feel like post George Floyd, there was a lot of external expenditure of energy, and it has tapped us all. And so we really have spent a lot of time like nurturing ourselves as a community, understanding what our needs are. And I think that has put us in a better place to figure out how we want to engage from an ally supporter perspective. And we did that. And so we've created like dual spaces. And I think it's really important as ERG leaders that you have a really clearly aligned mission, clear strategic initiatives. And for us, it's about community and connection, career progression and growth, and advocacy and influence. And so we developed 3 core pillars that drive everything that we do. And we work to make sure, because it's very easy to be doing stuff. But if you really establish what your core objectives are, it will help you to then be able to build and stay focused there.
I love that. Thank you. Anthony, there was a question that you wanted to take. Go for it.
Sure. So the question in the window there is, what are some effective ways to advocate for diversity and inclusion in customer success when you're not in a leadership role? And this is one of the challenges because, as we mentioned earlier, there are going to be a lot of programs that are going to die, DEI programs that, at least in name, are going to die. And that's okay. It goes back to what was said earlier. It depends on what your core values are. For me, no matter where I am, my team tends to be the most diverse. Because one of the things I look for is and I absolutely value, I'm an innovation junkie. I love studying innovation. And I believe that diversity leads to better innovation. And so I always look, who don't I have at the table? And it doesn't mean I go out and I set a quota, but I look at my team and I say, who don't I have at the table? What voice is missing? And then my job at that point as a hiring manager, I go look for that voice. I go look in the spaces where they are. I'm still keeping my standards the same, not lowering the bar for anyone or anything like that, but I'm going to look in those places for those voices I'm missing. So that's one way. If you're in a hiring role at all, you have the ability to go look for the missing voices. Who don't you have at your table? But then there's a role that everyone can play. If you're in a meeting and it seems like there's one group of people dominating the conversation, how do you be the person, or how can you be the person to just interject to give space for someone else? That's going to be one of the easiest ways, I think, that everyone can champion the inclusive atmosphere that's needed to really solve problems. Is how do you create space for other people? Sometimes it means you're going to have to rely on your conflict resolution skills. Sometimes it may be that you need to pull someone to the side after the meeting, say, you had some very good points, but next time, would you mind going last instead of first? Just to allow space for others to be heard.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Keishla.
Hold on that, Ejieme. I think thinking about it in your role as a titleless, what I like to call a titleless leader, because you are a leader, even though you don't have a title. So please remember that. I think it's really important to be aligned to your organization's founding documents. I think a lot of times we've worked in places, people put out a mission statement or a value statement, and it gets posted and they never talk about it again. I love to bring founding documents forward and use that as the lens through which to question, because this is what the company has said we're doing. So look and see where leadership has already laid out a plan, and then say, where are we in living these values out? Where are we in living these principles out? And then they don't have to be your words, they're the company's words. So spend some time in your founding documents, spend time with your leadership, asking how those founding principles play out in the work that you do each and every day. And I think that's a great way to tap into the principles that people say, that we like to call performative. Then we say, how are you behaving?
Well, that's how you coexist, right, Keishla? Like
Mhm.
the reality is you're in a mixed environment, people who voted differently, people who have different perspectives on DEI and all the things. And that's the reality. So the question isn't, does that exist? Of course it does. It's how are you going to exist with that?
With it.
And we always say it's like we're at work. I'm not here to change your mind on how you feel about me, on how you feel about relations or politics. I'm here to ensure that you can be an employee that lives towards these values and missions that the company.
Somebody
Can
said.
you do your job according to how the company has defined our core values, our vision, and our mission? And if they defined it that way, that's how you need to show up, and your posture needs to show up that way. Again, I don't need to change you as a human and how you think.
Right.
We're here at work. We're trying to do our job. But relating it back to that is disarming people from going to the personal and let's have a feelings conversation. It's like, no, I'm not having that with you. I'm going by what the company said. And I think that's really powerful. And I think the last piece on that too, Keishla, is that you titleless leaders, like leading from the middle, all of it. It's like that comes from folks like us who have the ability to shift language within our companies to say like leadership is not a title, it's a behavior, it is a mindset. It's about your ability to impact and influence. And you can do that from anywhere, but you do need to show how your employees can do that. And it does take a language shift of me saying and calling people leaders in what they do, creating those pockets of opportunity so they see themselves show up as leaders. So I thought that was so powerful.
That is, thank you. Yeah, back in my consulting days, we used to say like leadership starts by leading yourself.
Mhm.
Every day you have to show up, you have to be productive, you have to do the hard work. So love that we're reframing leadership as you can be a titleist, but you're still a leader. So I know we had a few other questions in the chat. We only have 3 minutes left though. So I think one of the things that we want to leave people with is, actionable takeaways. Someone in the chat asked, is there a specific course at Success Coaching that tackles the subject of being able to connect to your customer's country or societal culture? I don't believe there is. Success coaching folks on, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I see Ashley's coming.
I was going to say, I don't know off the top of my head, but I will certainly take everyone's comments and thoughts and take that back to Andrew and Todd for sure. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And I would say that would be a great collab with Success in Black as well. We're happy to collaborate on that.
Sounds good.
But thank you for that question. With only 2 minutes left, though, I do want to say and have our wonderful panel here leave the folks that are listening with one resource, let's say, because we only got 2 minutes. What is one resource you would recommend for people who are looking to be better allies or looking just to read up and be better educated on some of the topics that we were talking about today? Keishla, you go first.
I'm going to put forth, EAB has a history rooted in research, and we have been putting out some policy primers and things to help navigate the current space. So I encourage you to follow EAB. And while we work largely in the higher ed space, we also work in corporate spaces with our work with Saramount. And I think it's a great opportunity to try to stay on the edge and be able to be responsive to what's going on.
Thank you. Anthony.
So one of my favorite books on the topic is a book entitled Inclusify. It's the power of uniqueness and belonging to build innovative teams. You can find it on Amazon. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller. It's actually, I was just looking because I always forget who the author is. Oh, there it is, Stephanie Johnson. So it's a good read. And again, it marries my love for innovation. So you'll see how DEI, particularly in diversity, plays a role in innovation there.
Amazing. And Stephanie, let's close this out.
Got to pick one. This is so hard. I will tell you this though. Before pre-election, Living Room Conversations is a bipartisan organization, but they help to create conversation talk tracks and questions to consider to help people through conflict or through whatever's happening. And it definitely helped me in a broader sense, especially with the team of shaping questions that would have them think about how do you show up in your victory? How do you show up in your defeat? How are you going to navigate your spaces around people who are going to think differently than you on topics? How are you going to navigate yourself? And I think it's really helpful in the space that we're in right now of thinking about those questions and keeping yourself in that posture of constantly questioning that and using that just to help you. And one thing I've been doing with the team is just value realization is like, there's a parallel of what we do with our customers that you should be doing with yourself as an employee. Like, how do you show value realization where you work? The same way the strategies we use is with our customers, the same thing you need to think about yourself as you are constantly in that posture of showing the value and impact that you bring. So
amazing. Thank you so much. So I know we're a minute over. Thank you for those that were able to join us today. And a huge thank you to our incredible panelists. You dropped so many knowledgeable gems. Thank you so much for your time. Please make sure to follow Success in Black to stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn or on our website, successinblack.co. And also, again, huge thank you to Success Coaching. Please check out their website for the replay. And look, this conversation doesn't end here. I ask us as, allies, advocates, people in these spaces, please pushing for equity, keep advocating for yourself and for others, and let's continue to redefine leadership that includes everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.